In other news today, the actor who was the Lone Ranger for nearly a decade has died in California. His name was Clayton Moore. He had a heart attack. He was 85.
He galloped across our screens as the iconic Lone Ranger for years. Brave, noble, unstoppable. Then, in 1982, Clayton Moore vanished from the role without a word. No warning, no explanation. Was it a money dispute? A power play? His replacement flopped, but Moore stayed silent. Then came the 80s and a shocking lawsuit aimed to rip away his legendary mask for good. Behind the silver bullets and white hat was Jack Carlton Moore, born September 14, 1914, in Chicago, the youngest of three boys, and a man who would face real-life battles far darker than any outlaw he ever chased on screen. The Unveiling of Clayton Moore. His career as a circus acrobat began when he was 8 years old. Charles, his father, was in the real estate industry. Despite living through the Great Depression, the family managed to stay afloat financially. A live-in maid and a vacation house in Canada were among the things that the Moores managed to keep, while many other families were losing everything. Young Jack was able to imagine and explore more freely because of that comfort, which is something that most children don't have. Unfortunately, Jack was more drawn to performing and physical challenges than to fulfilling his father's dream of becoming a doctor. He had an unusual appearance even as a little boy. Being a circus acrobat was his career by the time he was 8 years old. It wasn't for fun. He put in a lot of time training. Jack would perform gymnastic flips and dangle from trees like a pro when on summer vacations to Canada, even though his peers were swimming and playing. Everything was worthwhile. He joined the Flying Bears, a professional trapeze group, when he was 19 years old. In addition to being a performer, he was also a catcher, whose job it was to capture people while they were in the air. It was challenging and risky, but he loved it. In the same year, 1934, the Chicago World's Fair was inaugurated. Jack Moore was there, playing above the crowds as millions came to witness the future. He amazed spectators with his strength and accuracy in his daily performances. Exposure was what it was, not merely amusement. He became well known. People looking for talent saw more than only his flips. Their eyes fell on the charismatic, camera-ready face. As a result, he broke into the modeling industry. Moore joined the John Robert Powers Agency in New York. It was significant. When it came to modeling agencies, Powers was among the best. Moore was an ideal candidate because of his towering stature, robust jawline, and sharp eyes. He appeared in advertisements, catalogs, and periodicals all the way into the late 19th and early 20th centuries. He struck me as the quintessential American. Earnings and connections in the industry came his way through modeling. Still, I felt like something was lacking. Silence filled the photos. Jack was eager to relocate. Fans saw a hero, but behind closed doors, Clayton Moore wrestled with demons that no six-shooter could fix. Shocking? Well, let's find out more. The risky decision. It was in the year 1938 that he took a chance. After leaving New York, he headed for Hollywood. There was no major part in store for him. His athletic abilities, a portfolio, and some hope. He made do with what he could find throughout those formative years: performer, supporting, and stunt work. While some grumbled, Moore saw it as an opportunity for growth. He studied the way the actors pronounced lines. Camera movement was explained to him. He was perceptive of time, light, and presence. He improved with time. Next came the year 1940. Stepping in was a producer by the name of Edward Smalls. He liked Jack's look and talent, but thought his name was too plain. Jack transformed into Clayton Moore. That name change wasn't simply about branding. It signaled a transition. Clayton Moore now believed he was meant for the screen. It gave him a new identity, one he enthusiastically embraced. That same year, Clayton married Mary Frances. They flew to Las Vegas for the wedding, joined by Mary's mother. A Hollywood elopement, full of excitement. But it didn't last. Their divorce was finalized in a little over 2 years. Their lives pulled in different directions. She later acted in a science fiction serial. Another breakthrough. He was on the verge of succeeding. For the 1942 film Perils of Napa, Republic Studios cast Clayton. The event was well received. He was the actor behind the character of Dr. Larry Grayson, who did everything from riding horses and fighting opponents to climbing walls and doing brain surgeries in caves. Even though it was outrageous, Clayton managed to make it plausible. He seemed really sincere. Whatever he did, his body performed it, making that serial cost $175,000. A great deal back then. However, the effort was worthwhile. Republic regarded Moore as their next great serial hero, even greater than Buster Crabbe, when he proved he had star power. Moore put his career on hold to serve in World War II, just as it was taking off. Moore enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Forces in the same year. His knee injuries from his time as a trapeze artist did not prevent him from serving overseas, but he was nonetheless instrumental in the war effort. His assignment sent him from Texas to Kingman, Arizona, following his training. His background in show business allowed him to put his talents to use there, providing troops with entertainment. Even though many of the troops knew him from his film performances, they still held him in high esteem and ridiculed him about it. After that, he joined the 1st Motion Picture Unit and helped prepare American airmen for battle with films like Target, Invisible. He was even stationed at the Culver City, California, base for a while. Moore admitted that his military career was dull, but he was pleased with the impact he had. July 19, 1945 was the date of his honorable release. His Life with Sally Allen. While he was in Arizona, something far more personal occurred as well. Moore called his girlfriend, the model Sally Allen, from the military post to pop the question. She had no qualms about responding positively. To be with him, she even relocated to the desert itself. Theirs was one of many brief but enduring romances that occurred during the 1940s. It was in 1986 that Sally passed away after 43 years of marriage. She was more than just Moore's ally. Because she frequently participated in the concerts he put on, she became an integral element of the base's morale. After the fact, Moore's co-workers remarked that his devotion to Sally mirrored that of the Lone Ranger. Moore wasted no time getting back to work after the war. Returning to the film industry immediately, he set his sights squarely on westerns. He worked non-stop from December 19, 1946 to January 19, 1947. Famous people he met, including Roy Rogers and Gene Autry, were captivated by his writing. Among Moore's film credits are 5 starring Gene Autry from 1949's The Cowboy and the Indians and Riders of the Whistling Pines to 1950's Sons of New Mexico and 1952 Barbed Wire and Night Stage, as well as 1952 Galveston. Working with famous stars was an incredible experience for him. One early portent of things to come was The Crimson Ghost in 1946, where he played a masked hero, but unrecognized. A number of television shows featured his guest appearances, including The Gene Autry Show and The Range Rider. The image of a rough but good-hearted actor that would come to characterize him was shaped in part by these parts. The part that truly showcased his versatility then came along. He wasn't just playing a villain, he was channeling something darker. Behind Moore's portrayal of Jesse lurked a shadow that felt all too real. And it wasn't just acting. Moore's Jesse wasn't just an outlaw. In the 1947 film Jesse James Rides Again, Moore portrayed the role of Jesse James. The production time was less than 30 days, and the total cost was $1,849. It's not simply because Moore's Jesse was an outlaw, a man striving to do what was right. It captivated the audience. The figure felt more alive because of his intensity, quickness of draw, and menacing edge. Republic Pictures immediately commissioned a sequel due to the outstanding results. Moore made a triumphant return in April of 1948 for The Adventures of Frank and Jesse James. Even more quickly, that one had a budget of $1.4 million and was shot in just 21 days. Even though Tom Steele was in charge of the most perilous sequences, Moore wrote a lot of the exciting stunts himself. Considering that most Republic serials consist of 15 chapters, these two 13-chapter serials were unconventional, yet effective. They proved Moore could hold her own as a franchise leader and portray a multifaceted hero. The guy responsible for the popular radio adaptation, George W. Trendle, was seeking a television producer to adapt his masked hero in 1949. Any actor would have sufficed. He needed somebody who embodied justice in every way: appearance, movement, and voice. "Mr. Trendle, I am the Lone Ranger," Clayton Moore announced as he entered the tryout. That assurance wasn't baseless. Moore, who had previously stood out in Ghost of Zorro, was an ideal choice for the part due to his athletic background. At the age of 21, he had already worked as a trapeze performer in Chicago and had performed at the Century of Progress Expo. Moore wasn't performing in the first program that aired on ABC on September 15, 1949. The Lone Ranger was his name. But then, an unexpected thing occurred. Moore possessed a deep, rich voice, but Trendle felt it was inappropriate. He wished Moore would imitate the voice of the radio host Grace Beamer. Moore stated nothing negative. In order to master every note and rhythm, he sought out a vocal teacher, trained diligently, and practiced relentlessly. But Trendle was still dissatisfied. In 1950, he vowed to replace Moore and told producers that Moore had strayed too far from Beamer's sound. However, Moore persisted. He went through a radical transformation, becoming the figure his followers had loved for years in both oral and visual form. What is the outcome? The shift from radio to television seemed natural to him, and his voice became instantly recognizable. There was more than one dude on the show. The Lone Ranger was an instant hit upon its television debut. From 1950 to 1951, ratings were phenomenal. From 1951, 1952, they were monumental, and from 1952-1953, they were unparalleled. What really set it apart, though, was the collaboration between Moore and Jay Silverheels. Tonto was performed by Silverheels, an actual native actor, a huge departure from the days when white performers typically donned makeup for these parts. Despite Tonto's continued use of shaky English, Silverheels restored his pride. Supporters took note. According to them, Tonto and the Ranger weren't master and servant, but rather, they were on equal ground. People were moved by such a concept. However, there was a lot of tension going on behind the scenes. A weekly wage of $150 plus a $2,500 bonus was Silverheels' pay in 1951. Despite surpassing Moore in earnings, by 1954 had hit $50 per week. The show's lasting impression came from the friendship they shared, though. It arrived just when I needed it. All around the United States, televisions were being set up, and families eagerly awaited the arrival of the masked man and his riding companion. Moore appeared every inch the part. It was his life. The horse, Silver, was trained by him personally. He rode, leaped, and wrestled on film, doing his own stunts, episode after episode. Decades after the fact, Moore would still spin his Colt 4.5 in public, impressing onlookers with his skills. The unthinkable happened. Even at the age of 71, he had maintained his fitness, speed, and identity as the Lone Ranger. He was quick to remind viewers that the Ranger's main purpose in firing was to disarm, never to kill. There was code for it. Not only that, Moore held to it. When 1952 rolled around, the unthinkable occurred. Without warning, Moore was succeeded. With John Hart's intervention, the program continued. However, something seemed odd. Nobody informed Moore why. He denied ever asking in his book. They claimed a contract conflict had arisen. Many, including his daughter, thought he had found out about the enormous profits made by Lone Ranger products and may have even requested a share of those revenues. However, she also believed he wasn't the kind to beg for money. Meanwhile, Trendle thought the actor was irrelevant. The mask was plenty for everyone. What a mistake. Moore continued to work throughout that year off. He stopped going by Clayton and started going by Clay Moore. He portrayed Graber, the villain, in Radar Men from the Moon. Moore inadvertently fractured the nose of the leading actor during a battle scene in the low-budget serial. Along with the original Lois Lane, Phyllis Coates, he was involved in Jungle Drums of Africa. The excitement and glory of playing the Lone Ranger were unmatched by these supporting parts, albeit they did pay the bills. Trendle had seen enough by 1953. He was captivated by all 52 episodes that he watched alongside Hart. Hart remained rigid. His tone was monotone. While mounted, he slumped forward. The show's ratings plummeted as viewers failed to relate to him. Moore was handled by a new agent, who was also the agent for Silver Heels. We began negotiations. Moore didn't merely come back. He brought a more substantial salary with him. Hart was subtly released, absent any kind of discourse or dispute. After Moore reapplied the mask, the program resumed its normal course. Thereafter, Moore appeared in 169 out of 221 episodes. His reappearance brought back the chemistry he had with Silver Heels. Once again, episodes felt right. Moore persisted even after the show's June 6, 1957 conclusion. He continued to appear in public as the Lone Ranger for the subsequent 4 decades. He filmed ads. He showed up on chat shows. Whenever he went somewhere, he brought the character along. At certain occasions, he would even recite the Lone Ranger's creed. Moore resisted a 1979 court ruling that would have prevented him from continuing to wear the mask and play the role he loved. Even in the shadows, things were shifting. Businessman Jack Rather purchased the character's rights in 1954. Even though ABC was still airing in black and white, he not only rehired Moore but also paid for the last season to be filmed in color with his own money. He had faith in the show's potential. It was also staged by Rather. After that came 2 feature films. Both the 1956 film The Lone Ranger and the 1958 film The Lost City of Gold were shot in Eastman color and grossed $1.1 million in the U.S. Both featured Moore and Silver Heels and were considered masterpieces by many. After The Lone Ranger finished, Clayton Moore continued to be famous for a long time. He did advertisements in the 60s and 70s to keep the persona alive. Particularly noteworthy was one from 1972 for Gino's Pizza Rolls. Jay Silverheels, his former co-star, was even brought back for the reunion. Like a gag, they dressed like the show's iconic villain and questioned, who was that masked man? At issue here was the question of who had first served them pizza rolls. People adored it, despite its strangeness. Advertisements for Aquavelva also featured Moore, whose rich, recognizable voice struck an immediate chord. He always approached his advertising with a personal touch. He would only play parts that portrayed the Lone Ranger as a morally upright hero. Moore saw more significance in the mask than just a mere costume. However, he had a less than smooth life behind the scenes. Another marriage? Moore remarried in August 1986, barely 6 months after Sally Allen's death, his wife of 43 years. Connie Crivello was the woman who had actually nursed Sally. That unnerved a few individuals. Their union was short-lived. It was over by the year 1989. Nonetheless, the pair was in the spotlight for a courageous deed in October 1986. They assisted a wounded motorist on a highway in California. Even though he was well into his 70s at the time, Moore rushed in to lend a hand, identical to the role he portrayed. Problems began to arise following the divorce. Moore was battling a legal battle that rocked him to his very core, combating the effects of aging and grappling with his own identity. Surprising litigation occurred in August of 1979. Moore was ordered by the court to cease wearing the mask in public by the Jack Rather Corporation, the owner of the Lone Ranger rights. Moore was 65 years old. For nearly 3 decades, he appeared innumerable times, including 2 21 episodes as the Lone Ranger. However, production on a new Lone Ranger film was underway at Rather's studio. They were afraid that if Moore stayed, people would get confused and their $18 million investment would be ruined. Moore arrived at the court hearing dressed like a cowboy, complete with a white hat and mask. "Take off your hat," the judges said. Instead, Moore departed in silence. He couldn't let go of the mask. Beyond the realm of law, that litigation had profoundly human implications. Vernon Foster, the judge, declared that Moore was no longer allowed to publicly wear the mask or identify himself as the Lone Ranger. A really crushing blow. The ruling was based on a provision in Moore's contract that had expired some time ago, as well as a previous instance where the son of Bela Lugosi had lost ownership of his father's Dracula image. A lawyer for Rather brutally attacked Moore throughout the court, accusing him of being too old to play the Lone Ranger and psychotic. "It was like getting slapped in the face," Moore remarked afterwards. Moore had the judge's sympathy, but the judge emphasized that the law was quite plain. A chapter that had persisted since the year 1949 came to a close with it. However, Moore persisted. The year was 1980, and he gave Foster Grant's sunglasses back to her. Instead of donning the mask, he would opt to wear shades. They used him in their "Who's Behind Those Foster Grants?" ad campaign, which also featured Woody Allen and Raquel Welch. The white cap, blue shirt, and red scarf were still on him in the ads. Absent the mask, perhaps. Young viewers began associating the Lone Ranger with the sunglass-wearing figure after seeing those commercials. The move was astute. Moore remained in the public glare throughout the years of 1980 and without violating any court regulations. A new kind of emblem was born with the glasses. In the next year, 1988, the film The Legend of the Lone Ranger was released. That was a complete failure. The picture lost $6 million out of $18 million in earnings, making only $12 million. Clinton Spilsbury, the lead actor, flopped spectacularly. He was good-looking, but acted badly. The producers decided to cast James Teach in his place, because his lines were so terrible. They made an effort to conceal it, but naysayers eventually found out. The casting was criticized by Gene Siskel, who said that the only question that would be asked later on was, who played him? It took almost an hour into the film for the Lone Ranger to even appear in his suit. The execution was sluggish and subpar. 2 Razzie Awards were given to Spilsbury for worst acting. He was no longer employed after that. Also, William A. Fraker, the filmmaker, never helmed a film again. It wasn't merely a mask that Clayton Moore fought over. Something much more fundamental was at stake than just legacy and identity. A shocking legal battle threatened to take his mask and his identity forever. But why did the studio turn on their star? He finally won the right to wear the mask again. The actor who had played the role of the Lone Ranger since 1949 was finally granted permission to do so in September of 1918. Following 5 lengthy years of legal battle. The litigation, which was spearheaded by the character's owner, Jack Ruther, had gone on since 1979. However, Ruther abruptly withdrew the complaint on September 20th. He passed away from cancer on November 4th, a few weeks later. It was thought by some that Ruther's attitude changed as she faced death. It was all over by October 17, 1984, when Moore's agency got the letter. The Lone Ranger mask was reissued to Clayton Moore, according to Bonita Granville Ruther, who was Jack's widow. The conflict abruptly ended. However, Moore did not wait silently. Even though he was forbidden to wear the mask, he came up with a brilliant plan to preserve its legacy. Shielded from prying eyes, he donned a pair of Foster Grant sunglasses. He was so famous that he was even promoted by them. People really enjoyed it. He had an appearance on Real People in the year 1988. There was such a prolonged and deafening round of applause that he was completely cut off from speaking. The crowd was behind him. There have been more than 1 million signatures on the petition. A total of 500,000 letters were addressed to him personally. Moore was elected into the Stuntman's Hall of Fame in 1982, 2 years before the case finished. His beginnings as a trapeze artist and his moniker, King of the Serials, were both honored. The turning point in 1990, however, was when his legacy in Western history was sealed. His induction into Oklahoma City's Hall of Great Western Performers took place on March 15th. A group of Hollywood greats, including John Wayne and Gary Cooper, welcomed him. He was also honored with the Western Heritage Award in the same year. To honor his career in Westerns, he received the Golden Book Founders Award in 1998. These accolades weren't given out solely for performing. He was defined by them. According to Moore, playing him improved her character. In reality, he was a true believer in the Lone Ranger's code. He brought up his former co-star, Tonto J, Silver Heels, at every single award show he attended. There are more than 200 episodes and films that they have created together. Nonetheless, 1987 was a banner year for accolades. A star was bestowed upon Moore on the Hollywood Walk of Fame on June 5th. However, this star was no ordinary one. A Lone Ranger named Clayton Moore was printed on it. Having both of an actor's names on a single star had never been permitted before. This had never been attempted previously. He arrived that day decked out in his finest outfit. Signing items brought by fans included lunchboxes, comic books, and silver toy weapons. There was a record-breaking turnout for a ceremony honoring the Walk of Fame. One of the busiest spots on Hollywood Boulevard is still his star. Moore was inducted into the Western Walk of Fame in Old Town Newhall in 1984, the same year he reclaimed his mask. He was there among legends like Clint Walker and John Wayne. After that, In 204, his renowned black mask was added to the Smithsonian's collection. It was the identical one he sported following his triumph in court. Justice was symbolized by that humble cloth and plastic object. Moore, riding horse silver, was featured on a 44-cent stamp printed by the USPS in 2000, depicting the Lone Ranger. National acclaim like that has rarely been bestowed upon a performer. Legacy of the Lone Ranger. Moore authored the book I Was That Masked Man in 1996. It detailed his life from the moment he won the part in 1949 all the way through the litigation that threatened to ruin it. Mr. Trendle, I am the Lone Ranger, was all it took for him to land the role, he said in his memoir. That was his sincere intention. Losing the ability to wear the mask was a painful experience, as stated in the book. A slap in the face, he said. However, he also noted the generosity of his admirers, the letters they sent, the support they offered, and the fact that he had no ill will toward anyone, not even his detractors. While on tour for his 1996 book, he repeatedly echoed the Lone Ranger's creed, that every man is equal and that every person has the power to make a difference. Both the stories and his authenticity contributed to the book's success among Western aficionados. Moore was the hero, not merely the actor playing the role. Both happiness and sadness had been a part of Clayton Moore's personal existence. His marriage totaled 4. He was wed to Sally Allen for the longest period of time, from 1943 till 1986. Their daughter's name was Dawn Angela. His second marriage, following Sally's death, also ended in divorce. The following year, in 1921-22, he wed Clarita Petroni at the age of 77. This occasion, though, was distinct. Peace had arrived. In his Calabasas home, the two led a peaceful and loving life together. His prominence began to wane. On the other hand, he had finally discovered someone who could relate to him. Clarita went public after his death with details of his final days. According to her, it was heartbreaking to see his body deteriorate. In her broken speech, she revealed that this man had once donned the mask. The heart attack that Moore experienced at his residence occurred on December 28, 1999. He was sent to a San Fernando Valley hospital in a hurry, but by then it had passed. That was 85 years ago. It was in the early days of the new century, immediately following Christmas. The timing seemed meaningful. A new age had begun. The legacy he created was still visible on his grave. His family included his daughter Dawn and wife Clarita, whom he abandoned. But that's not all. He also became a legendary figure. One built not just on TV shows and films, but on how he lived. He filmed 167 episodes of The Lone Ranger. He made countless appearances, but he also inspired millions to live with honor, courage, and compassion. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Also, do not forget to turn on post notification for more thrilling videos like this. Click in the next video popping on your screen now to enjoy another thrilling ride.